I grew up in a small family. There was only my mother, my aunt, and my grandma. And my father died when I was 17. And my aunt, my mother's sister, I was very close to her, and I knew growing up that she was a lesbian. We didn't talk about it, but she always had a woman friend. And I remember my mom and dad fighting about her and about her being around us, myself and my brother. She was my very favorite aunt. I loved her. She was cool. She played a guitar. She drove a Volkswagen Beetle. And as a kid growing up, she was just cool. My aunt came out in the 50s, actually, when she was in high school. That was a big time scandal at that time in the 50s. So she was ostracized from a very young age, had a hard time. And my mother also had a hard time because that was her sister, and she felt like she needed to protect her. My aunt finally did graduate and get out into the world, but she never came out ever in her whole life. She never told my grandma, she never told my mother, although we all knew. So I never thought about myself as being a lesbian until I was in my early 20s. So after high school and I started going to college, I realized that I was having feelings for an older woman who was actually a friend of my aunt's. At first, I just blew it off, and then I started thinking, you know what, I think I have real feelings for her, but I don't think I'm a lesbian. I think it's just her. I came out to her, and she turned me down because she was a lot older than me. And she was a friend of the family. She didn't want to be responsible for that. I had to kind of give up on that, but I wanted to let my aunt know that I was going to come out. And I thought it was going to be a good thing. I thought, oh, this will be easy because she's a lesbian. She might be happy to hear this story. So I came up to her and I said, I just want to tell you that I think I'm a lesbian. And she looked at me for a long time and she said, I'm sorry to hear that. And I was crushed when she said it. She said, because it's such a hard life. So after I came out to her and kind of got that smack in the face, I thought, well, maybe it's not such a good thing. Maybe I shouldn't be happy about it. At that time, you didn't come out at work ever. Housing was another issue. At that time, you didn't want to be out because if your landlord had any prejudice, they didn't have to give you an apartment. On the other side of that, there were bars at that time. There were a lot of gay bars. There were just women's bars. There was a lot of social activity, and I really didn't have a hard time. It really wasn't that challenging, and I felt very blessed, really, compared to other people's stories that I had it kind of easy. Eventually, I met a woman who lived in Akron, and I was always intrigued with her because she could do sign language, which I thought was cool. She was very outgoing and very social, and I was kind of backward and not really outgoing, not a real talker. So I always admired her from afar. And we came across each other many different occasions, and every time I was single, she was not, or she was single and I was not. But eventually we finally got together. At the time we got together in the early 2000s, marriage was not legal. Eventually in, I think it was 2015, it became legal in the state of Ohio. And at that time I had just gotten a windfall of money from my aunt who had died earlier that year. I thought, this is it. She can't refuse me now. So after twisting her arm for several months, she finally gave in, and I was very happy about that. We had a nice wedding, a big reception. We had all of her family, but my family, which was so small to begin with, my mother would not come to my wedding, and she never could answer why. It was weird. She just said, I can't. She knew about me. She knew about her sister her whole life, but she just couldn't do it. So I did deal with that. That was hard. So anyway, we've been together for 23 years now.
Right.
In this last election, it became apparent that we might have to deal with some things in the LGBTQ community that we've not had to deal with for a long time. The first thing that I think is going to happen is they're going to take away our right to be married, which is something I worked very hard for. I'm going to continue to work with Indivisible Akron. I want to ask for everyone's support. One of the ways you can do that support is to vote. Get out and vote. Tell everyone you know to get out and vote. It is a very important job that's going to affect everyone in the next few years. And the only way we're going to stop it is at the ballot.
Back in the grade school and in junior high, it was really kind of tough for kids like me who typically weren't into sports or who weren't athletic. There was a lot of harassment, bullying, both verbal and physical abuse from peers, which made it very difficult during those younger years. But it was something that, eventually I accepted who I was and just learned to ignore. Discrimination. Not only are we discriminated from people outside the community, but at times I feel like we can be discriminatory of each other. The older gay men are invisible. We even have some judgment against our trans brothers and sisters, which seems to me that if we really want to be inclusive and accepted by the outside community, then we need to accept everyone in our community as equals and speak with one voice. And given the current political climate and the backlash against our rights that we have, equal rights that we're trying to obtain, I think it's more important now more than ever that we stand together as a unified voice and make our needs and our desires known. There's the old saying that rights aren't like pie. Just because, I get a piece and you get a piece, your piece isn't smaller. There's more than enough rights to go around, and if we stick together, I think we can accomplish that.
Growing up, I was taught that being a member of the LGBTQ community was wrong and something to hide. Honestly, I really didn't know who I was until my mid-20s. Even though, looking back now, the signs were there. I mean, I had crushes on girls and, I just didn't know what to do with it. I ended up marrying a man at 20 because my parents pressured me into that. I thought, well, that's what I'm supposed to do. I'm supposed to get married, have kids, and the whole 9 yards. I realized who I was while I was married, so that was a problem. And I divorced him about 5.5 years later. As soon as I was divorced, I started dating women. The first woman that I dated decided to out me against my will. We were in a club one night, and my brother and my cousin and his wife were there. I went to the restroom, and while I was in the restroom, my cousin's wife came in, and she cornered me in the restroom, told me, "I've always looked up to you. What am I supposed to do now? You're such a disappointment to me," and went and told my brother. So then my brother's upset, she's upset, I'm upset. So I managed to calm my brother down, and he was okay with it, and we agreed that we would keep it between us until I'm ready for anything else, because I was not ready to be outed. I mean, that was the first woman I was ever with. I didn't come out to the rest of my family, like my parents, for instance, until my mid-30s. When I finally told them, my mom said that she was ashamed of me, asked me, what am I supposed to tell people now? And I said, don't tell them anything. It's none of their business. If I want them to know, I will tell them. My dad, on the other hand, he was okay with it. He said, baby, I love you. I just want you to be happy. He told my girlfriend, you take care of my daughter. Now, I'm going to move forward just a little bit to not so long ago in 2014. I went back to college late in life, in my late 40s. When I graduated, I went to work as a social worker for the state of Mississippi. I had a supervisor that relentlessly harassed me every single day for 9 months after I went to work there. She followed me around the building. She would sneak up behind me and just yell, yell my name. What are you doing? I'm like, I'm trying to do my job. This just went on, like I said, for 9 months until finally one of my coworkers spoke up and told upper management what was going on. She was fired. And that particular day, I had been out in the field and I came back to the office. When I pulled into the parking lot, I saw that supervisor loading her belongings into her car, and I knew what that meant, that she had been fired. So I signed out, I left. She was still in the parking lot in her car, and I got into my car. She followed me. She got right behind my vehicle, followed me all the way home. I was making different turns, trying to go a different route because we were taught, if that happens, don't take your normal route home. Later that night, I started getting phone calls from her. And I was in the grocery store one day, and she stalked me in the grocery store. I mean, I heard someone call my name from behind me, and I turned around, and it was her, and she was peeking around one of the aisles calling my name, and I didn't know what to do about it. So by then, the damage was done. I decided to quit that job. I filed a complaint with the EEOC for discrimination. We corresponded back and forth. They tried at first to tell me I couldn't be discriminated against because I was white. I said, I'm not claiming racial discrimination. I'm claiming discrimination because I'm a lesbian. They finally agreed with me and sent me a letter with the right to sue the state of Mississippi. I started looking for an attorney. Several wanted the case, but the problem was they wanted $10,000 in cash up front. Well, I didn't have $10,000 in cash up front, so I had to let it go. I had already been accepted to the advanced standing program at the University of Alabama before I took that job. And then once I quit, I called the university and told them that I wanted to go ahead and get my master's. And even though I was past the deadline, they still wanted me. I finished all my coursework, mostly A's, maybe a couple of B's. I mean, I was doing really well. I mean, finished the coursework, was placed in an internship. But the problem with that is, where it was placed was another division of the Mississippi Department of Human Services. I go to work there, I get halfway through my internship, and someone from the division that I worked at before came to work there. Once that person from the agency that I quit came to work for the agency I was doing my internship with, 2 days later, I was fired from my internship. I could not get another placement. So this whole incident with that supervisor and the Mississippi Department of Human Services ruined my career. I did all that hard work for nothing, and now I'm $100,000 in debt. And I have nothing to show for it, and it completely ruined my entire life. And now I'm a senior citizen now, and I'm struggling.
I came out in 1999. I was 19 years old. It was shortly after what happened with Matthew Shepard, and it just inspired me to be true to myself. I dated girls, and eventually one of them, it did become semi-serious, and that's when I was like, okay, I definitely need to make this move. Otherwise, I'm going to be stuck living a life that I don't think I'm going to be happy with. Back then, it was, of course, different than it is today for the younger generation. I've heard just stories of kids in like middle school, they are welcome with open arms. And it just wasn't like that, you know, when I was a kid. My parents, they accept me now and we have a great relationship. At the time, it wasn't great. My mom gave me an ultimatum. She told me if I went with this person I was seeing at the time, I wouldn't be welcome back home. And it was so severe that she actually took my shoes and hid them from me to where I couldn't leave. And I told her, I said, well, then I guess I'm not coming home. That was a very long time ago. I was living with somebody there in Brewster and we got evicted. So I needed a place to stay and Mom welcomed me back home. And it took her a long time, but she did become accepting. Same thing with my dad. They both have met my husband. They both just welcomed him with open arms. Nowadays, everybody knows about me at work. I'm out as can be. I don't have a reason to hide in the closet anymore. But I always feel that when people ask me, how did I know I was gay? And the truth is, I think I always knew I was different. And I always tell people, it's not that I chose to come out of the closet, it's that I chose to be true to myself. With today's climate, politics, and it's bad, but I have hope that we're gonna get through this. It does get easier. There's outreach programs if, you know, younger generation or even not younger generation, somebody who is coming out and they're scared. You know, there's all kinds of outreach programs to get a hold of. Just find that guidance that you might need to support you and not feel scared.
I was in my teens, early mid-teens, and I had a brother who was also gay. And I was 15, didn't know so much that he necessarily was. You know, back in 1981, at 15, you were still kind of innocent. So I kind of knew that he was, and he ended up killing himself. It was a week before his 23rd birthday. And me being 15 and knowing that I was gay, it scared the crap out of me. I looked at it as though if my brother couldn't deal with who he was, how would I ever be able to handle that? I saw what it did to my parents, so I could never do what my brother did. And didn't have those thoughts anyways, thank God. I just isolated myself, and I didn't allow anybody into my little circle. Wouldn't allow myself to be who I was. And I was like, that is the only way I'll ever make sure that nobody finds out I'm gay, because if they do, I'm gonna have to kill myself, like my brother. It was a horrible 12 years because I isolated myself for 12 years. I stayed at home until I was 25. That kind of helped with hiding who I was. And I wasn't really hiding anything because I didn't allow myself to be myself. But by that age, I got to the point where I was like, I can't do this anymore. I got to know what it's like to be loved, to know what it is like to love somebody, to wake up in the morning with somebody, to share a life with somebody. And so I finally decided, no more. I had just moved out and I saw the march in DC, maybe like 91, 92, somewhere around there, I think. And it empowered me. I was just like, wow, there's a lot of people just like me out there. And I decided I'm ripping that door off my closet and I don't care who knows, and I'm moving forward with my life. I had already met somebody then, and I was in a relationship, but I still wasn't like comfortable. And like people at work didn't know and stuff like that. My family knew, but that was it. And of course they were all surprised because they said, I thought you met him in college. I thought you were roommates. No, not roommates. They had in the Beacon Journal a few years later, they had a article about growing up gay in America. I was so impressed with that article in the Beacon Journal. It was a 4-day series in the Beacon Journal about growing up gay in America. And it all started because of a suicide. It was a 16-year-old that went to St. Ignatius that had killed himself. And it just hurt so bad. I was like, oh my God, I could have helped him. I was him. My brother was him. So I went ahead and I wrote an article to the Beacon Journal, like an editorial, about it, about my own story, about my brother, and how much I wish I could have been there for that teenager to help him. And They called me, the Beacon Journal called me up and they told me, we love what you sent us. And they said, are you okay if we print it? And so my real coming out, even though I was with somebody, it was a few years after I had met somebody and started cohabitating with him. But yeah, I came out in the Beacon Journal in the editorial section, and a lot of people at work weren't too, I worked in manufacturing at the time, which is a very macho industry. So it was not easy. I had people at work that refused to work with me. They said they weren't going to partner with me on jobs at work and stuff. And luckily, the owners of the company said, no, you're going to either work with them or you can leave. And I was very impressed by that. I don't worry about myself. I'm established. I know I'm going to be okay. But I worry about the gay youth. I worry about the trans community. You got to stand up. You got to stand up, you got to speak up, you got to make your voices heard, and there's so many different ways that you can do that. With like the Indivisible group and joining their LGBTQ organization. I feel it's going to make a difference, and I just want to make sure that I can help in any way I can. Some people help financially. You can donate to organizations. We got the Gay Community Foundation here in Akron. They have a lot of great programs. In fact, there's one that's set up in my brother's name. It's the Michael L. Holman LGBTQ Homeless Fund. And I remember when my sister set it up, I was like, we're past that. And now I look at it and I'm like, yeah, it's needed. Because there are kids that get kicked out. It's been happening for decades. We took in kids that got kicked out. I just want to do anything I can, whether I can help financially, I can help with my voice being heard, protesting, whatever I can do to help. Because I'm scared for them.
My name is Nikki Crawford. My pronouns are she, they. Proud trans woman of 4 years. Actually, 4 years ago on this day, I had actually started questioning if I was trans and all the fun questions that come with transitioning, and created a Reddit page where I could explore all the internet locations and just be like, okay, what's it like to be trans? Is this, all the questions you ask yourself. And so after I started that journey, I came to the conclusion, and on August 15th of 2021, I started medically transitioning and learning more about the community. Honestly, very much felt like a fish out of water. I was fortunate and unfortunate to never be a trans kid. The signs were always there. I was the cousin that my, cousins would want to put makeup on. And I'm like, oh no, don't do that to me. I don't want makeup, no. Or, just dressing up and enjoying more feminine activities while all the guys in my family would go play sports. I would gossip with my mom and aunts. Just always fit in, but I never had the language for the feelings I had. Once I started transitioning and learning about community, I came to the University of Akron for college, and I started meeting a lot of the queer community in Akron, and it was the first time in my life that things made sense. I was very much someone who didn't fit in. I was not very sociable. I did not engage in many groups, didn't have a place. And then once I started discovering who I was, it was like this egg cracking, as it's called online, and just bursting free and just becoming myself. And ever since, I've been nonstop. I'll just talk about it all the time. I'll go out and just be my bubbly self, which did not exist pre-transition whatsoever. I was talking to a friend online a couple days ago, and we were talking about just there's this tear in the community between those that are proud to be trans and those who are kind of wishing they were just born cis. And I'm someone who's very proud to be trans. My transness was my freeing aspect. I don't reject who I was pre-transition, and I love every step of my journey that got me to where I am now. I feel like breaking down those societal norms and just being able to be myself unapologetically is one of the greatest things I could have done for myself in the long run. From the state of the world and the way things are to just general knowledge about trans people in the communities, it's been really difficult for people to find their space. It's communities are very tight-knit, they keep to themselves, and they try not to fully advertise a lot of the things that they do, at least when I started transitioning, because of safety concerns, because of protest concerns, or not being able to share the same spaces of cis groups because of lacking resources and things like that. And so I feel like one of the biggest challenges that we see is resources, spaces to show up, things to do, spaces where you can dress up without question or try being really bad at makeup for a minute and not be judged. Or we think about things that are just very normal things to a lot of kids growing up, like summer camps or proms or various other things like that that trans people didn't get to participate in. And there's not a clear way of saying that, you know, this is a space for you. And so I think a lot of those challenges that come with that were just visibility. And that's why I like in recent years, there's been a lot of movements between different organizations to increase that visibility despite everything. Being public facing, being a representative talking to different cis communities and saying, this is who we are. We're not the evil thing you see on the news. We're just people too. Trying to normalize it and destigmatize it so that people can be present has been a huge challenge, let alone talking about the ability to exist in spaces. I am very stubborn in nature. I am not someone who takes no for an answer when I'm told what I can and cannot do. And so for me, I'm very much go ahead and try and keep me out of a space. I will find a way into it. But I think about less assertive trans people that cannot afford to put themselves at that risk. And what it takes to be visibly trans is a lot of energy. And not everybody has that fight in them. And sometimes we have to fight for the people that cannot fight for themselves as well.
So when I came out, it was 1971. So I was 15. So from 11 to 15 was pretty traumatic time in my life because my parents got divorced, and at 11 years old, that's pretty traumatic. And I acted out as a way of dealing with it. There was one girl in high school who is a year older than me. Her name is Candace. She went by Candy. She moved to Akron from Chicago because her parents legally disowned her. We just hit it off just like that. I mean, she just became my bestest friend and I became her bestest friend. Fast forward, she kept getting into trouble. She ended up back to Chicago. Her parents put her in a psychiatric hospital, and then she got into a halfway house and ran away from the halfway house and went down to New Orleans. I had money for an airplane ticket, and I flew to New Orleans to be with her. She lied about her age, said she was 18 and she wasn't, and worked at the bar, and I went and saw her, and she lived in the back of the bar. All that was in the room was a bed and a dresser, and it was filthy. And you know, that first night I was there, I think, was when she said, I want to kiss you, but I can't or I shouldn't. And I said, yes, you can, and you should. I mean, at 15 and back in 1971, American Medical Association still saw homosexuality as an illness. I mean, I didn't know. I just knew I loved her. My parents came back, found out I was in New Orleans. I called them and they said, you either come home or we're calling the cops on you. And I said, I'll come home if she comes with me. What happened after that for me was, you know, I became a very confused high school person. No one in Akron, in my high school, I went to Firestone High, nobody was gay or talked about that, let alone. I acted out a lot. I ran away again. This time I ran away to Columbus. I just couldn't deal with anything anymore. I couldn't deal with life. I ran away to my sister who was at Ohio State. Long story short, I ended up in a psychiatric hospital. I came home and then I just told my parents, I want to get out of here, I want to leave. So they sent me off to a psychiatrist, and that's when the psychiatrist said the AMA just overturned that homosexuality is no longer a sickness, it is a way of life, so you have to choose. I'm like, what? I mean, 16 years old, I have to choose what? I want to just go home and be with my friends. That kind of screwed me up even more. I ended up going to a psychiatric hospital because Candy was in a psychiatric hospital and I wanted to be just like her. First thing, they took me to Canton in a 6th-floor lockup. That was scarier than shit. I mean, my dad came in fact, and just looked around and said, get my daughter out of here. She does not belong in here. Then they put me in a more loosely organized psychiatric hospital in Worthington, Ohio called Harding Hospital. You earned your freedom based on your good behavior. The first couple of weeks I was in a locked house, and then eventually I got my freedoms. It was a really growing experience for me, I have to say. I will never say it was a negative experience. I don't feel like I was there at all because of my sexuality. After I graduated high school, I had to get out, and I left and ended up going to San Diego. I hired a therapist. In that 2-year period, was able to really come to terms with my sexuality. I fell in love with this girl who was from Akron, and she was coming back here. I followed her back here. At that point is when I came out to my parents, and my mom just completely cut me off. That lasted for about a week. From the time I got here to the time I went back to California, I'd gained like 25 pounds. I was just miserable. Then I went back to California, moved from Santa Cruz to San Francisco. Then I moved to New Mexico, Santa Fe for 5 years, and I met a woman that I was with and moved back to the Bay Area. In all, that whole story, I feel like that part of my life from the age of 15 till 20 was really what molded me. You have a core being, not about beliefs or anything, just about who you are, not what you do or what you believe in. Ever since I've been back to Akron and Indivisible, I feel really great about meeting people. I feel comfortable talking to people. I feel really good being involved in the LGBTQ working group in Indivisible, and I think there's a lot of work to be done. For young people to know what we went through, I think is really important.
Well, I have always had family and friends who were gay and felt supportive, but never thought of the term ally. And then my niece came out. She's a wonderful young woman. She is married, she and her wife Vic, and it was the most sumptuous, glorious wedding. It was in October of 2019, and the fall colors and the beautiful wedding gowns. And I always said it took 2 women put their heads together to get the most romantic wedding I've ever been to. Lovely. She is a poet, she is a writer, she is of great depth. I brought a poem, if I might, a portrait of an artist. She is all bones and muscle, definition through pale skin. On her back, a tattoo like splattered paint forms a butterfly. Beautiful disasters, she says. Her hair flows across her shoulder like moss down a fallen tree. Her eyes a clear brown like birds. We love her dearly and very supportive of her, concerned about her safety and the rest of the community outside the family, but we were complacent. We were in Connecticut, blue state, seemed very safe there in every respect. And then eventually my husband and I, we moved from Connecticut to Florida, which was an interesting red state, and then to Arizona. And that was the first time I marched, was in Sedona, Arizona in 2016. Then we moved to Ohio. And in 2019, July 2019, there was a Pride event and a rally in Medina. And that's when I first thought of the term ally. And then again, complacency. Biden won 2020, things are going well, and then our earth shatters. And here we have Trump in 2024. But what scared me so much was in February 2025, when the Stonewall Mountain, they removed the letters T and Q. It smacks of fascism. It is a frightening experience, removing people as if they did not exist. And I thought, okay, this is beyond. We're crossing many lines here. And that's when I felt like I can't just do nothing. Activism has to be the plan. And that's when I looked for an outlet and found Indivisible Akron and the wonderful group there.